I worried about ridiculous things, like that I might cause someone to kill him or herself, or that I would sexually abuse a child. I wondered if Jesus was really Satan, and if people were really demons, if everyone was just pretending to be my friend, just so that it would hurt worse when I found out the truth.
This is sinful.
I was terrified of thoughts and wallowed in grief and terror for over a decade.
There's no way.
Doubt and this lingering wrong feeling were the normal for me. It was only for small periods of time, sometimes even seconds, that I felt peace. I woke up in the morning and felt sick to my stomach within a few seconds.
This is sinful.
Peace was fleeting and momentary, and I had to keep asking after it. Do you think this is okay? Do you think this was wrong? Do you think I'm going to heaven? Do you think I should worry about this?
You know this isn't pleasing to God.
I worried about hell, about my soul, about whether or not my prayers could reach God. I wondered if writing fiction was the same as lying, and if writing about the hard things in life was displeasing to God. One of the worst bouts of intrusive thoughts I've had occurred for me in high school. For a time, my intrusive thoughts were, God, I promise that I will. It could be something stupid, touch this lamp, not eat toast. But more often, it was something more difficult, a much bigger deal. The one that kept forcing its way into my mind was, God, I promise that I will go to hell. Well, that was a conundrum, eh? I was a wreck. I kept picturing myself getting to heaven's gate, and once I stepped inside those pearly gates, well, just doing so would then be breaking a promise to God, that is, sinning. And then wouldn't I get thrown out of heaven for my sin? I was screwed either way, or so I thought. It was a cycle of horror. I would obsess and stress about a particular issue for 2 to 3 weeks until I had completely exhausted myself in every way, and then it would fade into the background. But only for a while. It or another obsession would attack again in a week or so. I was in bondage to obsessive-compulsive disorder for over 15 years. I was depressed, overwhelmed, scared, sad, and I felt guilty all the time. I felt hopeless.
You're guilty of this. You're so sinful. You're guilty. You cannot be forgiven. This is wrong. God will never forgive guilty. You're going to wrong.
So I started having intrusive thoughts when I was 7 years old. Had no idea that it was obsessive compulsive disorder until I was in my 20s. So I went for years and years without having a clue what was wrong with me, but I knew that I would think of things that I didn't want to be thinking of. It started off with a lot of profanity, and later on ended up being some blasphemous type thoughts about Jesus, and just hated that these things were happening to me but couldn't control it. My OCD has always kind of revolved a lot around spiritual issues, so I went through a few years where I really obsessed about whether or not God was real, or whether or not I really loved God, whether or not I was going to heaven, all sorts of things like that. And so when I eventually became a Christian at age 14 after growing up in a Christian home, and was super excited about that, but about a year later things just took a turn for the worst, and I just felt sick probably for the next 8 to 10 years. All of my friends, in high school and in college, they would always kind of tease me as the one who thinks too much, or the one who overthinks everything. And that was the best that we could, describe it, was just that I would overthink everything. With OCD, you can travel really far in your mind in a really short amount of time. So I went from wondering if friends really meant what they said to me, to wondering if they were even really my friends, to wondering if they were not maybe in fact demons. And I knew at that point that I had gone really far, and I was so scared all the time. So when I finally knew that whatever this was, had gone too far and I needed to get some kind of help, I asked my college mentor to get me connected with someone for help, and she had me start seeing a psychiatrist and a talk therapist. Over a period of 5 years, I met with 3 different psychiatrists and finally landed on the right medication to take, and that was a long journey, 5 years of horrible side effects. I had an allergic reaction that almost killed me. And just it was a really, really terrible time, but totally worth it to finally be on the right medication. So I started to meet with Dr. Seok-Won Kim, who is retired now, but was over at the University of Minnesota Medical Center and is just an OCD expert, has met with over 3,000 OCD patients and is just 100% brilliant. I'm very grateful to him. So I had been seeing a talk therapist, and while that was good to have somebody to talk to, nothing was happening. My OCD wasn't getting better. I was still feeling this incredible bondage and terror all the time, and it would go in spikes. When I first started meeting with Dr. Kim, he got me onto the right medication, but more importantly, he told me I needed to try something called cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically exposure and response prevention therapy. And he asked if I'd heard of it before. I had, and they're mostly horror stories because CBT/ERP is simultaneously the best treatment for OCD and also incredibly torturously hard. Very, very difficult therapy. For people who have if they have cleaning kind of obsessions and compulsions, they would maybe be forced to lie down in a bed full of garbage or wipe human feces on their arm and just sit and stay with it. These people feel like they're literally going to die, but they aren't allowed to wash or clean or whatever. So I knew that whatever mine would be, even though I am not that same kind of OCD, I knew that it would be really scary. So for me, what I had to do was write a story about an imagined worst day of my life, and it really was the worst day of my life. In this story, I go to hell. So he recorded this story onto an audio track that I had to listen to 4 times a day for 12 weeks. And it was hell. Dr. Kim was right. It was so hard. It was sickening. You're supposed to really feel it intensely. So you have to just focus in on this recording that you're listening to and just feel it. For the first time in my life, I had this weird peace. I mean, it was great, but I wasn't used to peace. So, and it also felt really precarious, like it could break at any point. But I was trying to just enjoy it for what it was. And on week 12 of my cognitive behavioral therapy, I graduated from it. I blog every week, every day about something related to mental illness, creativity, or faith, or some combination of the 3. I hear from different people all around the United States who are going through the same kind of intense suffering that I went through, and I'm able to tell them, this is how God rescued me from this. These are the steps that I was able to take toward freedom, and let me help you start your own journey toward that freedom. And it's been really great to just get to have some awesome conversations with people about what they need to do and where they can find a cognitive behavioral therapist, the difference between that and talk therapy, finding the right medication, and kind of be a cheerleader for obsessive compulsives out there who are in a place where I was about 4 years ago.